Huge depth of the topic. I'm not going to get into too much in the Modano side of things. If you understand Modano, then you'll already be a big lover and recognize the value of modularity. If you're not using Modano yet, then you should be. So modularity, or modular spreadsheet development, as we like to refer to it, it's basically breaking a model down into modules. So again, fairly obvious as a concept, but not the kind of thing that people tend to think explicitly about. If you can get into that modularity mindset, the benefits to your models and your modeling process are multiple. There is a huge difference between a modular spreadsheet and one that has just been kind of thrown together without taking into account that kind of modularity concept. From a scoping perspective, thinking of a model in modularity terms allows you to really compartmentalize the process. So if I'm putting together a business planning model for somebody and we're having that scoping conversation, to the extent they've got normal tax, they've got normal fixed asset treatments, normal working capital, we can just parse those modules out of the scoping process and focus much more of our time in terms of the fundamental operations and the unique aspects of their build requirements. And modularity doesn't just help the scoping process in terms of the conversation. From a documentation perspective, whenever we sit down with clients and we have to give them a proposal or a brief for the model that we're going to put together, documenting it in modular terms is just an absolute no-brainer. In terms of the impact of modularity on the build process, and again, there's a Modano question here as to whether you're using it or not. If you're not using Modano, there is still a build benefit. To the extent that you can use worksheets and use those as, business unit modules, you're still going to have a structural benefit in terms of the development process. Now, obviously, if you're building on a Modano basis, modularity is just a given. So your ability to insert new content, once you break a model down into modular pieces, it just skyrockets. Now, whilst a lot of people understand the concept of modularity, they often underappreciate the extent to which a modular model helps solve one of the key problems of modeling: the spiderweb. Think about the worst model in the world that you've ever come across, and I can guarantee the main reason, other than the use of turquoise or something like that, the main reason why it's been a shockingly bad model is that it's a spiderweb. And by spiderweb, I mean that there are just connections everywhere. Everything is related, everything is integrated. There isn't any structural rhyme or reason as to why a model might be organized in a certain way. By comparison, modularity forces you to actually have dedicated pieces within your model. It also, from a structural perspective, forces you to have kind of main arteries flowing between these main pieces. So if you think about the UK from a layout perspective, there aren't a whole bunch of roads from inner city to inner city. There are main arterial roads that connect London to Nottingham. And models really benefit from having this same concept. So once you start to build on a modular basis, you have much more compartmentalized information and you have much more unambiguous links between those key areas. And this feeds into model UX. So a modular model, once you've used one, you just won't go back. From a layout perspective, they're incredibly organized. And in terms of user experience, you just don't get that stress that's associated with shit flying everywhere. So from a fundamental layout perspective, a modular model is so much cleaner than a non-modular spiderweb type approach. And this feeds straight into learning. So a modular model has two main benefits from a learning perspective. In the immediate instance, it's compartmentalized. So people can develop a mental map of intermediate structures from model down to calculation. You have those intermediate things that people can kind of conceptually get their head around. So from an overarching structural perspective, a modular model in the first instance is easier to learn. Now, the other benefit of modularity comes when you have repeated modules. So if we build out, say, an aged care model, if I build a module for a single aged care facility, I might have a model that's got 90 aged care facilities in it. Because I've used a repeated modular structure, what we typically refer to as a fungible structure, it reduces the amount of information that somebody has to learn in terms of uniqueness. So if I can understand one aged care facility, I can understand probably 90% of the model. So from a learning perspective, modularity fundamentally reduces the amount that you have to actually learn and the complexity of that learning in getting to grips with a new model or maintaining an ongoing model. And this ties into the last point, which is just consistency. A modular model is just far more consistent structurally than a non-modular spreadsheet. And again, that ties into just that learning piece to say you have less unique items that you have to actually learn. Now, after having watched this video, and again, there's no sales pitch associated with this, if modularity strikes you as a very good way to structure and design and build out a model, then just buy Modano.